Okay, please be seated. State.
Pakistani State Rest.
Okay, defense, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Call your first witness.
The defense would recall Dr. Gary Kunsman.
Doctors, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name again and spell your last name for the record.
Gary Wayne Kunsman, Kunsman.
Sir, please have a seat. Make yourself comfortable. Defense, you may proceed.
Hello again, Dr. Kunsman. I want to follow up and ask you some questions about the some of the behavioral effects of people on lockup. Am I correct that back in 2015 there was a Broward County grand jury that did a overall investigation into synthetic drugs?
Yes, that's correct.
And as part of that investigation, they also investigated the effects of flocka. Is that correct?
Yes.
Am I correct that you were called to testify at that investigation by the state attorney's office?
I was.
And so I want to talk about kind of what some of the effects we have been seeing on flocka, what some of those symptoms are. Am I correct that users of flocka have been described as having superhuman strength?
Observers have been have documented that they appear to have a superhuman strength. That's an anecdotal observation. It's not of course, no one has superhuman strength. People only have human strength. People under the influence of alpha PDP seem to demonstrate an apparent increase of strength, most likely because they're impervious to pain, and so the normal things that restrict their, when you're engaged in some kind of activity, the things that stop you no longer apply. So you don't feel pain, so you just exert more strength.
Have we also seen people under the influence of flocka exhibit symptoms of extreme paranoia?
Well, I haven't seen anyone under the influence of alpha PDP.
Sure, but has there been anecdotal evidence that you have seen, that you have that you were aware of?
Yes, in a number of our cases, which are principally post-mortem cases in which we've detected alpha PDP, excuse me, I think that's my allergy to work. I do, thank you. The investigative report and the report of the medical investigator that I get, which involves or includes reports from first responders, including the police, EMTs, etc., oftentimes describe people as having a dysphoric response to alpha PDP, which is generally a paranoid type behavior.
And in that paranoid type behavior, they often believe that they are being chased or attacked by people that aren't there. Is that correct?
Correct. And either people who aren't there, they sense that the people that they encounter are hostile or are extraterrestrial.
Extraterrestrial?
Aliens.
Okay. Am I also correct that we see an increase in aggressiveness with people on PDP?
Yes.
Okay, can you talk about that, please? What are you seeing?
one of the things that alpha PVP does, and all of the cathinones do in the central nervous system, is that they release serotonin. And when there's a massive serotonin release, there is people experience this dysphoria, this discomfort, and they tend to act in a manner that's much more aggressive than they normally would. They respond more violently. They respond more. They're quicker to fly off the handle, I guess would be a good colloquial way of describing it. And that is probably true, as we know from other stimulant abuse, in people who have any kind of underlying sociopathology, a tendency towards violence. That becomes even more uncovered or more apparent under the influence of these drugs.
Am I correct that we also see people who are experiencing varying degrees of psychosis?
Well, psychotic behavior is really a psychiatric definition. What we know is that people have an altered perception of reality, which is an aspect of psychotic behavior.
People have an altered perception of reality. That's a symptom of people being on flocka. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. They no longer have the ability to interpret the world as a person who's either, well, for lack of a better term, we'll say a normal, mentally healthy person, or a person not under the influence of stimulants or cathinones of these central nervous system active drugs.
Am I correct that alpha PVP, flocka, one of the noteworthy reactions is a syndrome called excited delirium?
Excited delirium is a condition that's been associated with cocaine use. Because there are no clinical trials and there's not this same degree of investigation into alpha PVP use or other cathinones, it's probably more appropriate to say that people exhibit a series of behaviors that are very similar to excited delirium. And the small situations that occur, whether normal or a person not under the influence of such a drug might consider to be incidental, all these things become blown out of proportion, and people respond disproportionately to other actions and things that they see. And they become uncontrolled. And one of the most common things that's encountered in excited delirium is the fact that when first responders, EMTs, or police try to either help a person or restrain them, they become extremely difficult to control, and it takes a large number of people to restrain them. And what we found with alpha PVP was that oftentimes chemical restraint, like the use of the anesthetic ketamine, was necessary to subdue a person to the state or a condition where you could take them to the hospital to get treatment.
And that's done by first responders who are otherwise unable to restrain this person?
Yes.
Judge, I have nothing further.
Just briefly, Your Honor.
State.
Dr. Kunsman, so alpha PVP, that's an FDA-regulated drug, right? That comes, you can buy it on any supermarket shelf?
No, it's never been investigated as a therapeutic medication.
And it's fair to say that you only get the really bad outcomes, the deaths, the suicides, a couple of DUIs, things of that nature. People that are having a good trip don't come through your office.
We tend to, yes, we tend to see the more dramatic types of deaths. People who die of natural causes tend to either be under a physician's care and so are not medical examiner cases, or they are rapidly determined by the medical examiner to be natural deaths. Oftentimes well, I shouldn't say oftentimes, but many times we don't even perform a toxicological analysis on people.
So, Dr. Kunsman, alpha PVP and the synthetic drugs were rampant in Broward County, and what, $5 a dose back in 2015?
Yes.
So there were more than the, what did you testify to, 62 cases that the medical examiner's office
I
found?
believe our total, we still see alpha PVP in some of our cases, not to the extent it's one every 3 or 4 weeks instead of 2 or 3 a day. And so, but the 60 or 62 were a fairly steady, well, it felt like a steady stream to me.
But you would agree that in Broward County there was more than 60 or 62 doses of Flocka that were ingested in the year 2014 and 2015?
I suspect so.
You suspect so. And there have been no human studies on it, on alpha PVP?
There have been no clinical trials in which people who gave informed consent, meaning they understood what they were doing, why they were doing it, and the effects of the drug, or the possible effects of the drug, where they were given either alpha PVP or a placebo, in other words, just a sugar pill, and an attempt to evaluate how people responded to the drug and what the body's effect on the drug was. To the extent that there have been human trials, there are, I know of one presentation at a scientific meeting and one publication which measured concentrations of alpha PVP, or attempted to measure them, in individuals who said that they had consumed or thought they had consumed that drug.
Thought they had consumed that drug. Is that because some things are marketed as Flocka when they aren't actually alpha PVP?
Yes.
And is there any way you can testify to the specific effects on Dr. Muhammad Knight of alpha PVP?
No.
Can you testify on how it would affect someone in combination with marijuana?
No.
Can you testify how it affects someone in combination with cocaine?
Not for a specific individual with alpha PVP alone or any other drug.
And do you agree that drugs affect different people in different ways?
Yes.
So, for example, with alcohol, you have your individuals that become angry and belligerent when they drink, right?
Correct.
And you have some that become quiet, more complacent when they drink, right?
Yes.
And there have been studies on alcohol and its effects on individuals.
Hundreds.
But everything you have on alpha PVP is anecdotal.
Correct.
Nothing further. Your Honor.
Redirect.
No, thank you, Judge.
Doctor, thank you. You're excused.
Thank you.
Judge Manuel,
Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to step back just for 5 minutes and be right back out with the next witness. Please be seated. Defense, call your next witness.
Judge, the defense called Demetrius Elder.
Elder, would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Okay. Please take a seat. State your name and spell your last name for the record.
Demetrius Elder, E-L-D-E-R.
Defense, you may inquire.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Elder, on April 25th, 2014, were you the driver of the vehicle in which Armando was a passenger in this incident happened?
Yes.
How old were you?
44.
Where'd you grow up?
Dallas, Georgia. Both.
When did you move to South Florida?
Like 97, 96, something like that.
Do you have any kids?
Yes, 2.
Back in 2014, and prior to this incident, were you working?
Yes.
What was your job?
I was operations manager at Intel.
What is Intel?
It's a telemarketing/marketing firm.
Okay. And how long had you been there for?
About 8.5, 9 years.
What was your role as an operations manager? What does that mean?
I basically ran the day-to-day activities for about 200 people. All the supervisors reported to me.
And telemarketing, what is it? What is it exactly that y'all are doing there?
So it's one of two things. Either they make outbound calls to try to generate sales, or if you called Comcast because you had issues with your service, you may reach us.
And so you are, how many employees are you overseeing?
Probably about 200.
And these are the ones that are actually engaging in these calls,
Yes.
for lack of a better word. Okay. Did you, well, are you a convicted felon?
Yes.
How many times?
It's kind of, so there's multiple convictions, but it's only one case.
Okay. It's 20 convictions, correct?
Yes.
And that was one case?
Yes.
When did that happen? What year was it that you were charged?
Like 2003, 4, something like that.
And did you get probation for that?
Yes.
Were you still on probation for that in 2014 when this happened?
Yes.
You have a medical condition, is that correct?
Yes.
Can you tell us what that is?
It's myasthenia gravis.
And what does that mean? What is it? How does it affect you?
So it's a autoimmune disease that basically affects my muscles and my nerves. There's something in my plasma that basically stops my muscles from doing what my nerves tell them to do.
All right. And how does it impact you? Like what happens to you when you're experiencing this?
So no strength, my breathing's difficult, kind of blurry vision sometimes. Main thing is the muscle strength and breathing.
And so there are times in which your muscles, your brain can't tell your muscles what to do. Is that how it works?
Yeah, it's like my brain's telling my nerves, but my nerves are not getting to my muscles.
And how do you manage this?
So they give me 2 different type of pills, which kind of blocks out whatever's going on, and physical therapy, and then I had to have surgery to remove the gland that causes it.
When were you diagnosed with it?
The right diagnosis, 2014 sometime, but I was misdiagnosed twice before that.
Okay, so when did you first start experiencing symptoms?
Maybe, I'm not exactly sure when, but a few years before 2013.
And it wasn't until, you said 2014 that you finally got a diagnosis?
The right one, yes.
What was that before or after this incident?
So I saw my primary care doctor before, and he kind of, I guess he diagnosed me, but he sent me to a neurologist. I ended up seeing the neurologist about a few days after the incident happened.
So at the time of the incident, were you on the same medication that you're on now?
No.
Right. Had they figured out your medication procedure at the time of the incident?
No.
Were you ever hospitalized because of this?
Twice.
Was that before or after the incident?
Both times were after. Yes, both times were after.
After the incident, the police actually come and visit you in the hospital, is that right?
Yes.
What was your condition at that point?
The very first time they came to see me, which would have been either the same night that I was in the hospital. Yeah, the first time it was the same night, and I was in bad shape. I couldn't speak to them. I could barely speak and breathe the first night.
Okay. And what about the second night?
Second morning, the next day they came, I want to say, I was able to speak to them then.
How much did you weigh at that time?
Maybe 115, 120 pounds,
And just by comparison, how much do you weigh now?
180.
I want to talk about Walter Stanley. Did you know someone named Walter Stanley?
Yes.
How did you know Walter?
I've known him for about like 6-7 years. He's a friend. I met him through Marlon.
Okay. Do you know where Walter works?
At the time he worked for me at the same company. Now I don't know what he works for.
Okay. But back then, he actually ended up working at your company. Is that
He
correct?
worked there like twice.
Okay. And he was what? What was his
As a
role?
telemarketer. He was on the phones.
Several months prior to this incident, there was, am I correct, there was an incident that occurred between Armando and Walter.
Yes.
Were you present for that?
No.
Did you have any contact with Walter in the months leading up to that?
Yeah, we were friends. I saw him every day at work, and we hung out together. So I'm sure I did. Yes.
Okay. And did you see Armando in that time?
Yes. Same thing. We're friends. Saw him all the time also.
Were there ever times in which you observed Armando and Walter together?
Yes.
Tell me about that. What was that like after they had this incident? What was the dynamic?
So before, we were all friends. We hung out together. After the incident, they didn't speak to each other like they normally do. We've all been around each other again after that, but it's just those two kind of, I guess, keep their distance.
Did Armando ever try to apologize for what had happened?
Man, yeah, like every time we saw Walter.
Every time he saw Walter, he tried to apologize. Okay, and did Walter, I guess, accept the apology?
He didn't accept it, but he didn't turn it down either. He just was basically, I don't want to have anything to do with it.
That evening, let's go to April 25th, 2014. Where did your night start, for lack of a better word?
I got off work. I probably went home to change, or I don't know what I did, but I ended up driving to March's house.
All right. Who did, and March is Armando?
Yes.
All right. Is it March? Is it March?
It's his birthday. March.
It's March. Okay. Like a month.
Yes.
You drive to Armando's house. Who did Armando live with?
His wife and kids.
And where's his wife and kids there?
His wife was there. I don't know about the kids.
You don't know, you don't remember, or
I
you
don't
wouldn't have seen
remember.
them?
I don't remember. I might not have seen them, but I don't remember if they were there or not.
What did you do when you were at Armando's house?
Just chill, talk, just bullshit. Went to the pool. Hung out there for a while.
Did somebody show up at some point to Armando's house?
Yeah. So a few minutes before we left to go to Corey's house, Walter drove by.
And Had he told you he was coming?
Yeah, he called me, asked what I was doing. I told him I was over Mark's house. He was like, oh, I'm around the corner. I'm come check you. So I came.
So Walter came to Armando's house.
Yes.
Had that happened before? I
Yeah,
mean,
he'd been to Armando's house before, and again, like I said, after the incident happened, you know, they had been in the same place together. They just didn't really speak to each other.
when Walter gets there, is he with anybody?
He has two girls in his car.
Had you ever seen those girls before?
I think one of them I might have, but
Okay. And so what is the interaction when Walter gets there?
nothing. He was just shooting shit. He basically just wanted to show me that he had the two girls.
I'm glad you pointed that out because how long was he there for?
Not that long. We just spoke a couple minutes, and I told him we were leaving, going to the courthouse, and he said, all right.
And was this unusual behavior for Walter to show up to just show off these girls?
No.
What happens at that point?
So he leaves, and Mark's and I get in the car, and we drive to Corey's house.
How do you know Corey McMath?
Met him through Walter,
How long did you know Corey for?
maybe 4 or 5 years, something like that.
When you get to Corey's house, was Walter there?
Not yet.
Was Corey there?
Yes.
Was Corey drinking?
Yes.
Was he drunk?
Yes.
Was he acting drunk?
Yes.
While you were there, what are you doing? What's going on?
Just talking to everybody. Just everybody's chilling. I mean, it's not really a party. It's, I guess Corey has kind of a hangout spot since he cuts hair there. So everybody just shows up at his house.
Who drove to Corey's house?
I do.
In whose car did you drive?
It's my girlfriend at the time,
Who was your girlfriend?
Ashley.
Ashley Farrell. Okay. And this was a Chevy Impala, is that right?
Yes.
Why are you driving this car?
Because Ashley had recently bought a new car.
Okay. How recently?
Less than a month. Before, maybe like exactly a month.
That was what kind of car was that?
That she bought?
Yeah.
Kia Optima.
And your housing situation, where were you living at that time?
So I had just moved from my house and we moved in together. Me and Ashley.
You had just moved from where you had been living in with Ashley?
Yeah.
In the vehicle, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we've seen in that vehicle. What was that stuff?
So after I packed all the large stuff in the moving truck, it was just like blankets, just stuff that you didn't want to put in the truck that I was moving from my house to the next.
Okay, so the stuff in the back seat, in the trunk, that's your stuff.
I don't know about the trunk, but in the back seat, yes.
Was there a bunch of junk also in the front, in the floorboard, things of that nature?
Yes.
When you get to the party, or when you get to Corey's, I guess I won't call it a party. When you get to Corey's, were you drinking?
No.
Was Armando drinking?
If he did, I would see.
Were you there long enough to get drunk?
No.
What did you do? What's going on while you're at the party at Corey's house?
So again, everybody's just talking to each other. I mean, you're just hanging out with friends. That's it. And a few people are drinking, smoking weed.
It's dark out, is that right? Yes?
Yes.
At some point, did Mohammed Knight show up?
Yes.
Had you ever met Mohammed Knight before?
No.
Did you know who he was before this?
No.
Obviously now you know the implications of what happens later. Did you see any interactions with Mohammed with anybody at the party?
Yeah. So when he first showed up to the party, he spoke to everybody, gave everybody that he knew, which was everybody except me and March. After that, him and Corey walked into Corey's house for like a minute or so. And then they came out. When he came out, the first person he wanted to speak to was Armando, was March.
Okay.
And he had a conversation with March for a minute, less than a minute, or whatever. And then he went to speak to Walter.
Okay.
Spoke to Walter for a few minutes.
This is Mohammed that went to speak with Walter.
Yes. Then
Okay.
he spoke to Walter for a few minutes, and then he walked back over and spoke to March again.
Okay.
While he was speaking to March the second time, Walter came up to me, told me to leave. So I left.
What was exactly what Walter said to you?
Why did you bring this nigga around here? You don't even know you've been set up.
When he said this N-word, who was he referring to?
March.
What did you take that to mean?
That I shouldn't be
Objection
there.
calls for speculation.
Sustained.
What did you do at that point?
Grab March and left.
Did you delay it all?
No, and as soon as he told me, I walked right to March, grabbed him, told him, let's go. We drove off, we got in the car and drove off.
Where we parked?
On the left side of Corey's house, like under a tree, there's a big tree on the left side of his house.
All right, so that would be on Terra Road itself?
Just Terra Road, the one facing Miramont?
It's the one that runs into Miramont.
Yes.
So, did you whip around Mohammed's vehicle?
No, I mean, well, we were parked, the stop sign's right in front of us. It's right there,
The stop sign for Miramar Parkway?
yes,
It's dark out at this point, is that right?
yes.
You get in the driver's seat, Armando gets in the passenger seat?
Yes.
All right. What happens next?
We pull off, drive to the stop sign, so there's traffic coming on Miramont Parkway, so while we were waiting, I took the time to try to catch my breath, try to kind of clear my throat.
Why? What do you mean by that?
So with the myasthenic gravis, it's hard to breathe at times, and it always feels like something's in your throat, like you have to cough or spit up or something.
Okay.
So
So you get to the stop sign, and how does this work? Does it come in waves? Is it constant?
It's constant, but it gets worse as the day progresses. So in the morning, I may have a little strength, but by the end of the day, it's not good.
All right. How long are you at the stop sign for?
Like in total or before everything happens?
But before Mohammed shows up. How long?
Not that long, maybe less than 10 seconds.
Okay. And so you're there trying to catch your breath. What happens?
Next thing you know, I just hear March screaming, and I look over, there's some dude on top of him, like punching at him, leaning in the car,
Where was Armando when he was screaming?
sitting in the passenger seat.
Okay, so he's sitting right next to you.
Yeah.
What do you see? What happens?
He's kind of leaning, like back in his seat, kind of like in between, not in between, but he's leaning like this, leaning back. And there's
When you say he, I want to make sure we know who you're talking about.
March.
Okay.
March
So,
is leaning back in his seat, and then there's a guy on top of him.
all right. What's the guy doing?
It's like punching at him.
Did the guy have anything in his hands?
Yes, he had something in his hand. I couldn't, that time I couldn't tell what it was, but it was something kind of shiny and sharp, you could tell, but I didn't know exactly what it was at that time.
Was the man actually, like, stabbing him with it? How did it work?
It was like he was kind of throwing punches, but at the same time, it was like he was trying to cut him. It wasn't like he was doing like that. It was kind of like he was going, like he was punching him, but at the same time, just kind of following through.
Okay. What's Armando, is Armando saying anything?
He's screaming
What's he screaming?
to help, and who is this guy, asking me if I knew who he was.
Okay, when you say asking me if I knew who he was, did he say it like
No,
you're saying
I mean,
right now?
He's screaming and like, he's excited.
Okay. What do you do?
So when I first see the guy on top of Armando, I get out of the car and I'll go around and try to pull the guy off.
All right. You say you go around to the passenger side,
Yes.
and what happens there? How do you try to get him off?
Like now I'm leaning on him, trying to pull his body, his arm.
Leaning on who?
Muhammad. Muhammad's on top of March, and I'm basically on top of him, like leaning on him, trying to pull him away.
Were you able to move him at all?
No.
Did he even acknowledge your presence, that you were there?
No.
All right, were you saying anything?
Yeah, I was telling him like, all right, it's over with, come on before the cops come, just get up, it's over with.
What happens next?
So March is still screaming, and I'm still trying to pull the guy off of March, and then I notice there's a knife on the floorboard. I pick the knife up, and again, I try to pull this guy off for Armando, but I can't. He's not budging. So then March starts screaming again, saying this guy's trying to kill me, he's trying to cut my throat. And at that time, I didn't know what to do, so I took the knife, and I stabbed him in the back.
How many times did you stab him?
Just one time.
What did Muhammad do when you did that?
At that point, he let go of March and got out. He looked at me and mumbled something, and then he started walking toward the car that I guess that he came from.
Okay. What did you do?
I got back in the car and drove off.
What did Armando do?
He just shut his door.
Did Armando ever get out of the car that night? No?
No.
Did you see a woman there?
Yes.
What did you see her doing?
So when I first walked around the car to go try to pull the guy off, she had her door open. She was standing between the inside of the door and the car, and she was just standing there screaming.
Did you say anything to her?
As I was trying to pull Muhammad off of March, I told her to come help.
Did she
No,
come help?
she just kept screaming.
Did that woman lift Mohammed Knight off of Armando?
She never came to the car until everything was over with.
When you left, why did you call 911?
At first it was kind of, I guess, just kind of shocked, and for the people he was with, he would call 911.
Okay.
And then after that, March had spoke to an attorney and said, don't speak to me. I didn't talk to him.
When you, prior to this night, did you have any knowledge of Mohammed Knight?
No.
Ever met him before?
No.
Ever see Armando with him? Aware of any reason that Armando or you would have had to want to stab this man?
No.
Did you observe any injuries to Armando?
Yeah, after everything was over with, I could see marks on his face and stuff like that.
I'm showing the state where the pre-mark is defense A and defense B for implication purposes. I'm going to show you what I've marked as defense A and defense B. Ask you if you recognize the person in those pictures.
Yes.
Who is that?
Armando.
Does that picture fairly and accurately reflect what Armando looks like after the incident?
Yes.
Does the defense would seek to admit defense A and B into evidence?
I'm at the B and C.
B and C?
Because you have, are you the same one you presented before?
I did not. I have not introduced anything.
No, you presented it.
Can I come?
Okay. I got you. That's fine. I can,
redo this and see.
Thank you.
Request permission to publish to the jury,
Can
Judge?
you use, all please?
Yes.
Judge, I have nothing further. Thank you.
State?
Thank you. Mr. Utter, did you take those photographs?
Can't be 100% sure. I did take pictures, but I can't be 100% sure if those are everything.
You took pictures of the inside of your car, right? And so you did that on the evening of April 25th, 2014, or the early morning hours of April 26th.
Whatever night the incident happened, it was like that night morning. Yeah.
And so after this incident occurred, you left the scene with Armando Baptista, correct?
Yes.
And you actually went to someone else's house and tried to go there, but they weren't home, correct?
Yes.
And then after that, you went to Mr. Baptista's house and saw his wife there.
Yes.
And after that, his wife actually drove you home and you left that car at his house that night.
Yes.
So then the following day, you come back and pick up that Impala and bring it back to the Coral Gate condominiums.
Yes.
No. And are you feeling okay today? No issues with your myasthenia gravis? Okay. And you've been treated for it, you've had the surgery to remove your thymus,
Yes.
and you're taking your medication? But on that evening of April 25th of 2014, it was pretty bad, right?
I mean, not the worst, but it was bad.
No, you could hardly breathe, you said.
Right.
You could hardly take a drink of water, much less beer or anything alcohol that night, right? But you were fine to drive a car?
Yeah.
You weren't worried that your foot was going to slip off the pedal and cause an accident?
No.
You had that much strength.
No.
And so you said you were coughing and you had opened up the door.
Yes.
Did you look and see if traffic was coming?
In front of me?
Yes.
When I first pulled up, there was traffic. I saw it then.
So there's traffic and you're coughing and looking out the door. And your car's still in drive at this point, right?
I may have put it in park. I don't know if I put it in park or had my foot on the brake. I'm not sure.
Is it common for you to put it in park when you come to a stop sign?
If I open my door, it is.
Okay. Now you said the victim, Muhammad Knight, knew everyone at the party except for you guys.
I'm assuming he knew everybody because he spoke to everybody except for us.
And you said he gave dap? Can you?
Like a handshake.
So you made contact with everybody else, friendly with everybody else. Okay. And let's see. Prior to this incident, you had been at the house and Walter had been at Armando's house, showing off the two girls. Proud of himself that he had two women, right?
Yes.
Okay. And after that, you took Mr. Baptista to Corey's house.
Yes.
Mr. Baptista wanted to go there to meet up with someone, is that correct?
I wanted to see his brother-in-law.
Okay. So his brother-in-law was never at his house.
Not that many.
His brother-in-law was at Corey's house.
Yes.
And so you took him over there to talk to him.
Yes.
Now, you gave quite a number of statements to law enforcement in this case. I specifically want to talk about the last one when you were in the hospital, July 24th of 2014. That was the longest one you gave, right?
I don't know if it was the longest one or not.
Today you testified that there was something shiny in the victim's hand when he came up to the car.
No. I said when I saw him in the car. I never saw him walk to the car.
So you never saw him walk up?
No.
Okay, so once he's in the car, you see something shiny in his hand.
Yeah.
Have you ever given a statement that is different than that?
I don't remember, I don't think so.
Okay. And I'm showing him page 5, counsel, of the July 24th statement, and that is one that's 5 of 10. Okay. This is your answer here, and right here, the one that's, just read it silently to yourself. Back in July of 2014, did you give a different answer?
I said that you could tell it was a broken bottle,
So it was a broken, what type of bottle?
beer bottle.
And so is that now, testimony has changed since then?
Not really changed, I mean, it was shiny, but sure, I guess.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about that beer bottle, the one that is in evidence in this case. Are you aware of the DNA test results on the beer bottle spout?
Yes,
And you're aware that those came back to you?
yes.
And is that your beer bottle?
It could be, if my DNA was on there, sure, yeah,
And that is something that was in your car at the time?
yes,
And including the twist-off caps from those evening was in your center console at the time?
yes.
So that is not something the victim brought into your car, that broken beer bottle?
I would guess not, no.
So you've known Armando for a number of years, right?
Yes.
Did you go to his wedding?
I didn't know him before he was married.
Okay, so you've only known him when he's lived here in South Florida.
Yes.
And did he have on his Boston Red Sox hat that day?
Yes.
Is it a fair statement that Armando always wears a hat?
I mean, he wears a hat, I don't know about always, but he does wear a hat.
And so most of the time he wore a hat.
Yes.
So the individual you were meeting at Corey's house, was he present when you arrived at Corey's house?
Yes.
How long did that individual stay there?
Once we got there, he was maybe there like 5-10 minutes, then he went to the store, and he came back, and then he was there a few more minutes, and then he left.
Okay. And during that time, was there any interaction between Mr. Baptista and the deceased in this case, Mr. Annette?
Muhammad wasn't there yet.
Wasn't there yet. And so Mr. Baptista, he's a maintenance person, right, of his apartment complex?
Yes.
So he takes care of the grounds,
Yes.
he takes care of the pool,
Yes.
he paints the buildings if they need be,
Yes.
he does renovations.
Yes.
And prior to the incident of going over there, you didn't see any cuts, marks, bruises on Armando.
No.
But your testimony is that the pictures that are in evidence that you didn't take, so you can't testify as to when they were taken, look about the same that he did on the night after the incident.
Yes.
But the car that's in, that's not the same Impala, correct?
I don't think so. I can't tell by looking at the picture which car it is.
The Impala has that tan beige interior, correct?
I think so. Yes.
And then those photos have a gray and black interior in that car.
Okay. So then I knocked on that car.
And you cannot tell when those photos were taken.
No.
And you stated that the knife was on the floorboard of the car.
Yes.
Is that inside of the vehicle?
Yes.
And so you saw Armando take one shot of Jack Daniels that night, correct?
I don't remember if he took a shot or not.
Was that at his house?
I don't remember. I don't remember if he took a shot or not. I know he didn't take a shot at the get-together, so if he did, it would have to be at his house.
And you were not injured in any way at that event, correct?
No.
You never called 911 or spoke to the police other than when they came to you?
Correct.
And the knife in question, you don't have it? The clothes that you had on that night, did you keep your clothes?
I had them for a while, yes. Well, my
And-
ex-girlfriend had them for a while,
But they've since been thrown out.
yes.
And the cell phone that you had at the time, you left that with a friend as well, right?
Yes.
But you can't get into it because you don't remember.
I have it, but I can't, I don't know the password to it.
And your testimony is that, so the beer bottle that was broken came from inside of your car.
I guess, I mean, it had my DNA, so
Did Armando sit on it and break it in the car?
you know,
Did it break during the incident?
I would suspect that the guy had it in his hand, yes.
So your testimony is that even though your DNA is on it, that the victim somehow got it out of your car and hit Mr. Baptista with it?
Yes. He got it out of the car while he was in the car.
Okay. And you never saw Armando get out of the car? And everything happened inside with the victim?
Yes.
There was no fighting outside of the car? And after the fight was over, the altercation, the victim gets up and walks away?
He starts walking towards the car he came, and that's when I guess his girlfriend walked around and helped him back towards the car.
And did you ever see that girlfriend?
When I saw her, when I walked around the car the first time, and when she came to help Muhammad.
And he never walked towards the front of your car?
I mean, I don't think so. Maybe when he got out, because he was stumbling when he got out of the car, but I don't think so.
And so, Mr. Elder, did you see Mr. Baptista holding the knife that night?
No.
Did he hand you the knife that night? You know that the victim was stabbed? Is that correct?
Yes.
And you only stabbed him one time?
Yes.
So the other 7 wounds were inflicted by Mr. Baptista?
I would assume so, yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Did you ever invite Muhammad Knight into your car? Did Armando invite him into your car? Was there any reason for Muhammad Knight to be in your car? You testified across that the whole thing happened inside the car. You stabbed him outside the car, though, right?
I was outside the car. I was outside leaning over him, kind of half in, half out of the car.
Okay, so there was that action that was outside the car.
Yes, because I was standing outside.
The state asked you about the clothes. How long were those clothes there for?
I just threw those away right before the trial started.
Okay. That was, so 4 years later? And that was post July of 2018. The phone. Give me a yes or no answer. Am I correct that there was a several-year period in which you did not have access to that phone?
Yes.
And so that's why you can't get into it at this point?
Right, because I don't remember my passcode.
Nothing first.
Okay, Mr. Elder, thank you. You're excused. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, perfect time. It's straight up on noon. An hour okay for you guys for lunch? Okay, so if you get back here at 1, we'll try and start as close to 1:15 as we can. Okay? And remember, don't talk about the case amongst yourselves. Defense, do you have any more witnesses this afternoon? Or you don't know yet?
We have no additional witnesses. We need to have a brief conversation with Armando about whether he's going to testify.
Okay.
If anybody testifies, it's just Armando.
Okay. All right, we'll see you guys at 1 o'clock.
Thank you.
You understand you do, are you ready?
Yep, that one taken.
You understand you have the right to remain silent, and that the fact that you did remain silent cannot be held against you. And you understand you do have the right to testify if you choose to do so, and have your testimony considered in the same light as any other witness. Let me ask a couple follow-up questions. This decision, I understand it's in conjunction with your attorneys, but this decision is your decision. It's not, you're not sitting there saying, I want to testify, but my lawyers are forcing me not to.
No.
Okay. All right then. Do you want to make your second J? Well, let me ask. Do you have any rebuttal witnesses?
No, Your Honor, I'm sorry.
You want to make your second JOA motion now, and then you can rest in front of the jury?
Sure. Also, I would ask, well, I'll do it anyway. Defense rests. Judge, at this time we make our second motion for judgment of acquittal for all of the same reasons that we made in the first judgment of acquittal. At this point, the standard is whether essentially reasonable minds could differ as to the guilt of Mr. Baptista. We have now heard that the symptoms of somebody on FLACA. We have also heard from Demetrius Elder's testimony. Demetrius Elder's testimony is consistent with all of the physical evidence, that all of the blood was in that car, that Mohammed was in the car on top of Armando. Everyone has testified to that Mohammed was on top of Armando inside the car. He had no reason to be in that car. Given the jury instructions, which we're about to go over, which specifically says somebody is presumed to be in fear if they are attacked inside an occupied vehicle, or if somebody enters an occupied vehicle. They don't even have to be attacked, just enters an occupied vehicle that they're in. That Mr. Baptista had a right to stand his ground and meet force with force. Given the physical evidence, given Mr. Elder's testimony, we think no reasonable juror could find that the state has met its burden of proving that Mr. Baptista was not acting in self-defense.
Judge, the standards whether reasonable minds could differ, the state has put on evidence as to each element to go to the jury. At this point, it's a question of fact for the jurors to decide.
Okay, based upon the evidence as I've heard it, there is no evidence as to how he got into the car, as I recall the evidence. If Ms. Jim Bolus, if the jury were to believe her testimony that Mr. Baptista was the aggressor, I do see that there is sufficient evidence that the jury could decide the state has met its burden. So I'm going to deny the second judgment of acquittal. You want to bring the jury and you want to arrest him from the jury, correct?
Yeah, I want to arrest. I would recommend sending him home at that point. And then let's do the charge conference. We've got 22 witnesses and 5 days worth of testimony to go through for closings. And we should start closing.
I have no problem with that. As I said, we have the extra day. And I have no problem with that.
Fine, Judge. Miss Florinor, which I believe is juror number 6, she has to leave tonight to start concert in Miami at 7 p.m.
Okay. All right, bring him back in. I'll let you rest and I'll give you good news. Tomorrow morning,
8:30. So
I'll give them a little heads up because I'm going to make it 8:45 because they don't let them in. There's nobody in the reception until 8:30. They're bouncing around here like the one juror got a little concerned. Just couldn't get in and panic a little bit. So
You just want to say 9?
what's that?
You just want to say 9?
9 is fine.
9 o'clock, Judge. Sounds good.
Please be seated. That's call your next witness.
Judge, ladies and gentlemen, the defense rests.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have some good news for you, or some may think it's good news. I'm going to let you go home now. We have some business we have to attend to that's going to take a while. And what I know one of you has something planned tonight. want to make sure that you have plenty of time to listen to everything you're going to have to listen to tomorrow and also to deliberate. Now, I know today there was a problem because, and I have to take a little bit of the blame for that. We used to have a gentleman at the reception area over there that used to get here at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. Well, he is retired, and today they had a roll call with the bailiffs and people that occupy that, so there was nobody there at 8 o'clock. They don't get there till 8:30. So rather than have you get here real early tomorrow and mill around, if you can get here, I'd like to start as close to 9 o'clock as I can, so if you guys could get here like a 8:45, 10 to 9, somewhere in there, we can start and, try and, you'll get the case tomorrow at some point. Okay, so with that, I'm going to let you go home. Again, please don't talk to anybody about the case. Talk to yourselves about the case yet. It's not time yet. It will be tomorrow, so have a good evening. Enjoy the concert. Is ever going to the concert?